Hello, class. This is Professor Stan Blankenship again, and today we're going to talk about chapters 7 and 8, which really focuses on the behavioral perspective of corporate social responsibility. And it's areas that really draw on a lot of things like the market, like profitability, compliance, accountability, those type of things. Uh, One thing that's going to happen this week, you will have another reflection paper, and it is by a guy named Harsh Manwani, and he really shares a compelling story in his TED Talk. It's a much shorter TED Talk than you've had previously, but I want you to really listen closely to what he says about profitability and about what companies can do for others. So, getting back on chapter 7 and 8, these chapters draw on a lot of things like from economic exchange and human psychology, those type of things. And, companies can't only focus on economic value. Today, they've got to really think about and consider things like social value. And honestly, firms just need to look at just creating value. That's the bottom line, value for their many stakeholders, their customers, their employees, the communities they reside in, economic stakeholders, societal stakeholders, and of course, as I said, the internal stakeholders, those who work at the company. Um, so they got to take those things into consideration. And profit is probably the best measure that we have, honestly, that captures the different kinds of stakeholder values. So just keep that in mind. Companies they can be motivated to address CSR either voluntarily through like self-regulation, or they can be forced into like mandatory enforcement through some kind of coerced compliance. So strategic CSR really works effectively if firms realize for themselves, that this in their self-interest to create value for their broad range of stakeholders. So, in my view, going the voluntary route is probably the more successful route. Instead of having to be pulled into it, you sort of voluntarily go into it. Behavioral economics, guys, it combines what we know about the economic exchange and the human psychology that I mentioned earlier, and it sort of enables for better models of human behavior to be created. So a big part of CSR is all about accountability. You got to be able to define things, you got to be able to measure it, and firms must be held to account for their actions by their stakeholders, and both sides need to be able to engage and talk and listen to one another. um, there are three important concepts that must be considered here, and that's CSR standards, CSR certification, and CSR labels. And in dealing comprehensively with all three of these components is really essential, I think, in producing a measure that is genuine and thorough, and therefore really is useful for both the firm and for its many stakeholders. And so again, companies' codes of conduct, and I shared this with you earlier. This is my Fruit of the Loom code of conduct. And these kind of things, these codes of conduct, are really the basic template uh, for measuring accountability and compliance. And so it's important to have codes and these type of things, but there's a lot of other tools that are available to help measure compliance. From an international organization standards, the ISO is called. Monitoring quality and social responsibility, and they monitor environmental compliance and standards. That's part of what the ISO does. The United Nations also has some guiding principles, and they focus a lot on just a variety of areas of CSR. There's also the Higgs Index, which is another great tool. The Fair Labor Association, the FLA, has a lot of great resources out there. And of course, the ILO, the International Labor Standards, also has resources available. So again, there's lots of tools and resources that companies can use to help them monitor and measure their compliance in their factories or in their whatever, in their various businesses. Finally, I would just say this is important to understand life cycle pricing. This is really ensuring that you're taking into consideration all costs associated with both the production and the consumption of any product or service, and that everything is fully accounted for in the prices that are charged for those products and services. Again, CSR is more of a holistic view of things. As we said, we have to be able to measure things and have compliance standards that we comply with. And then, of course, we have to be able to account for everything from the conceptual stage of the product all the way to the landfill and everywhere in between. CSR touches everything. I thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.